Welcome back to the deep dive. When we talk about public health issues, it's usually about lifestyle or access to doctors, maybe budget problems for
The
infrastructure.
usual suspects.
But what if?
Yeah.
What if the really widespread poor health we see in, say, the American population wasn't just some unfortunate side effect of modern life?
What if it wasn't negligence?
Exactly. What if it was actually the plan?
Well, that's a heavy thought. And it leads us straight into our source material for today. We're diving into a document that makes this exact, very provocative claim.
Super provocative.
It argues that the poor health of Americans isn't an accident at all, but, and this is their phrase, a meticulously executed strategy.
Yeah. Okay. That is a huge claim. So the source itself, it's called The Poisoning of the Pen, Health Strategy of the Game. And we need to be clear about its viewpoint from the get-go. It sees the world in what it calls the final, most cynical stages of the Great Cycle.
Yeah, it sets up this very stark division. You have the elites on one side.
And then everyone else who the document consistently calls pawns in the pen.
It's quite the framing.
Yeah.
And it's not just, reporting on health stats. It's claiming to reveal a grand strategy.
A blueprint, almost.
Exactly. A blueprint where control isn't primarily about laws or watching people, but about weakening them, biologically, even spiritually, just making sure the population stays manageable.
Okay, right. Let's try and unpack that then. Our mission today is to explore the three main pillars of this alleged strategy.
How the source claims control works through what we eat
What we drink.
and how we're treated when we get sick. Food, water, and medicine.
And we want to understand the cynical logic this source uses to tie these seemingly separate things into one big system.
We're basically following the trail of dependency, starting right at the bottom, physical survival.
Absolutely. Let's start there. Theme 1, the profane diet. That's what the source calls it. Weapons in the food supply.
Dramatic phrasing.
It is. The document argues the first move in this strategy was deliberately swapping out the natural, harmonious diet of the farmer.
Whole foods, locally grown maybe.
Right. Swapping that for what it calls a profane industrial diet of imbalance and toxicity.
And the stated reason, according to this source, is pretty brutal. It's to create a population that's, quote, physically too sick, tired, and inflamed to have the energy or mental clarity to question the walls of their zoo.
A zoo. Wow. So physical weakness is step one to making people mentally passive.
That's the argument.
Okay, so how specifically? They start with something they call the sweet poison.
Ah, yes. High-fructose corn syrup, HFCS.
Right. And the source treats HFCS as way more than just, a cheap sugar. It calls it a deliberate act. Cheap, yes, but also addictive, and designed specifically to mess with the body's basic ability to function, like maintaining metabolic balance, pH balance.
And what's really interesting there is how the source connects that directly to dependency. If you attack that core balance they claim,
You guarantee the downstream problems.
exactly, you guarantee the dependency diseases, diabetes, fatty liver disease, chronic inflammation, the very things that then push the pawns, as they call them, back into the expensive medical system.
Creating a loop.
A perfect self-feeding loop, starting with these cheap, maybe even subsidized ingredients.
And it's not just the sugar, right? The source goes further into what it calls the chemical chain.
Additives, preservatives,
Yeah.
the works.
Yeah. And it spends a lot of time arguing that things like E-numbers or preservatives that might be banned or restricted in other countries, other parts of the game board, as it says, are intentionally allowed in the American pen. Not by accident, but because they serve this strategy.
This is where they really hammer the intent angle.
Hmm.
They even pick out specific examples.
Like azotocarbonamide.
Yeah, the one they dramatically call the yoga mat chemical.
Right.
And the implication isn't just, oh, this makes bread fluffier. The claim is these things are used because they disrupt the body's natural harmonics. That's the term. They systematically weaken the physical body.
Making people more prone to just feeling generally unwell. Low-grade chronic stuff.
That seems to be the idea. More susceptible.
So, we often hear poor diet makes you tired or causes weight gain. But this source ties those common feelings directly into a narrative of deliberate weakening.
It reframes it completely. It suggests that just doing your grocery shopping could be, in a way, compromising your ability to think clearly.
If you're always inflamed, maybe dealing with gut problems, running on chemically tweaked energy.
The source argues you just lose the basic capacity, the actual physical resources needed for deep, critical thought, or for organizing any kind of effective challenge to the system.
Your own body becomes a limitation.
A cage, yeah. limiting intellectual freedom. That's the connection they make.
Okay. So if the body is weakened and the mind dulled by this profane diet, where does the strategy go next? The source suggests it escalates.
It does. And this brings us to theme 2. And this is where things get, well, much more esoteric, spiritual even.
Right. The core claim here is about the poisoned water. And the source describes this as an act of supreme blasphemy.
It's a huge leap, isn't it? Connecting something like, old city pipes with a cosmic plot.
Definitely. The source claims that water contamination, and it mentions things like lead pipes, industrial pollution, neurotoxins found in water supplies.
Common issues we hear about.
Common issues, exactly. But it claims these aren't just signs of aging infrastructure or lack of funding. It insists this is deliberate act of sabotage.
Okay, but hold on. Most people would explain crumbling infrastructure through, budget cuts, deferred maintenance over decades. It's expensive to fix.
Right. So how does the source justify calling it sabotage instead of just, costly government failure?
That's a key point they make. They argue it's the choice involved. The choice to ignore what they see as the sacredness of water. The choice to let these known problems fester when solutions, even if expensive, do exist. That knowing neglect, in their view, elevates it to sabotage.
Because they see water as more than just H2O.
Precisely. They describe it as a sacred substance, a physical link to something bigger, which they actually call the Omega Ocean.
Wow, okay. Omega Ocean. So poisoning the water isn't just a physical health risk.
It becomes much more profound in this narrative. It's meant to sever the divine connection.
How? What's the mechanism they propose for that?
This is where it gets really specific and, frankly, quite out there. The source claims these contaminants are specifically chosen or allowed because they cloud the lunar connection.
Lunar connection?
Yeah, understood as like the subconscious, the intuitive link to the universe. And more physically, they claim these contaminants calcify the pineal gland.
The pineal gland, which the source calls the monarch's eye.
Correct. The monarch's eye. And by calcifying it, gumming it up, essentially.
The goal is spiritual blindness.
That's the word they use, yes.
Yeah.
Spiritually blind. So the pawns can't access this higher intuitive truth. They can't really perceive the reality of the penitentiary they're supposedly living in.
So it connects decaying lead pipes directly to blocking someone's higher consciousness.
It merges the very mundane material problem of infrastructure with this high-stakes, almost metaphysical battle over awareness. It's quite a leap.
Okay, let's track this. First, the food makes you too sick and tired to think straight. Second, the water supposedly dims your inner perception, your intuition.
Blinds the monarch's eye.
Right. So once the population is physically weakened and, let's say, spiritually vulnerable, according to this source, what's the final stage? The source calls it the most cynical part.
And that brings us to theme 3. This is the economic lock-in. They call it the Pharma solution.
The Pharma solution.
The strategy, as laid out here, is that after the elites have effectively created a sick population using food and water,
they then step in to sell the fix.
Exactly. But it's a fix that manages the illness rather than truly curing it or solving the root cause.
Yeah.
And they profit hugely from this management.
The document is incredibly critical of the basic business model of modern healthcare, isn't it?
Absolutely scathing. It states bluntly that the purpose of the pharma industry, in this worldview, is built on managing chronic sickness for long-term profit, not on actually achieving health or independence for people.
No genuine healing.
Not the priority, according to this source. It even claims the whole system operates under the Caduceus Creed.
The caduceus. That's the staff with the 2 snakes and wings, right? People often mix it up with the rod of Asclepius, the actual symbol of healing.
Precisely. And the source uses that distinction very deliberately. The caduceus is the staff of Hermes or Mercury, the trickster god, the god of merchants, commerce, negotiation.
So using that symbol implies the whole setup is about business, deception maybe, rather than pure care.
That's exactly the implication. It's a sign, in this narrative, that the framework is designed for commerce first, care second, or maybe not at all.
And the source says the high costs, the complexity, that's not a system failure.
No, they call those things intended features, not bugs.
Intended features. Because if it were cheap and focused on prevention,
the whole dependency cycle would break down. The high cost is the control mechanism, the economic extraction part.
It's designed to squeeze maximum value out of the sickness they claim was orchestrated in the first place.
Which leads to what the source calls the cruelest part of the transaction, the final transaction.
Final transaction. What's that?
It frames healthcare costs, especially end-of-life care or managing chronic conditions, as the final price of admission or maybe continued stay.
Ah.
The game, it says, is designed so the pawns have to trade their very last pennies, and it spells it P-E-N-K-N-E-E.
Penny, like the pen they're in. A deliberate pun.
Seems so. Trading their last resources to buy just a few more years of life inside the very penitentiary that made them sick.
Paying for continued captivity. Essentially, not freedom from the illness itself.
That's the grim picture it paints.
Okay, if we just step back and look at this whole cycle. Food, water, medicine. The source really emphasizes profit as the glue holding it all together. How does that singular drive connect these different areas so tightly in their view?
Well, it creates this perfect closed loop of control and, frankly, extraction. The food system, based on cheap, potentially toxic inputs, generates widespread chronic disease and mental fog. Check.
Yeah.
The water system, through deliberate neglect or sabotage, adds a layer of spiritual or cognitive dulling. Check.
Yeah.
Both of these things then create a massive, dependent customer base for the third system, pharma, and the for-profit healthcare industry, which then profits enormously by managing the problems created by the first two.
It's an integrated system where the profit relies entirely on the population being unwell.
On population debility, yeah. That's the core argument connecting all three.
So wrapping this up, what does it all mean? We've walked through a very specific and, let's be honest, disturbing viewpoint.
Dismally disturbing.
It claims that widespread poor health isn't just happening, but is a deliberate weaponized strategy, working on three fronts: physical weakening through diet,
Spiritual blinding, supposedly through water.
and economic exploitation through the medical system that treats the resulting sickness.
And for you, the listener, taking this deep dive gives you insight into a particular, detailed perspective on how control and dependency might operate, according to some sources.
Understanding the internal logic here, how someone could connect, say, lead pipes to the pineal gland or corn syrup directly to profit motives, it's key to grasping certain alternative ways people interpret major societal issues, especially around health.
Whether you agree with it or not, understanding the narrative structure is valuable.
It's certainly a narrative that forces you to look again at things we might normally dismiss as just system failures and ask, could they be seen as part of a functioning strategy instead?
It does force that question. And maybe a final thought to leave you with, directly from the source's implications.
Okay.
The source suggests the pawns are too sick and tired, too physically and mentally compromised, to even question the walls of their supposed zoo. So if you accept that premise, even just hypothetically, that clarity is being systematically undermined by these three fronts, what's the very first step a pawn would need to take? Independent of the pharma solution, what action comes first to start repairing the physical body, to maybe begin seeing with that monarch's eye again?
Where would you even begin to break that cycle?
Exactly. That's something substantial for you to think about.